Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining. We're going to give a few more minutes as more people join the public hearing today. If you're here to testify, I'd ask that you please put your name and your any organization you're with into the chat box. Otherwise, you can just sit tight and we'll get going in just a few minutes. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself now by pressing *6 and stating your name and any organization you're representing. We'll put you on the list for testimony as well. All right, we're going to get started here in just a minute. Again, for those just joining us, if you'd like to provide testimony today, please put your name and any organization you're with in the chat box. If you're joining by phone, you can press *6 to unmute and do that as well if you wish to provide testimony today. Okay, Austin, is there anybody else in the waiting room?
This is our group.
Great, then I think we'll get started. So good afternoon, everyone. This is a public hearing on proposed additions to Washington Administrative Code, Chapter 194-40. I'm Dave Pringle, Policy Advisor at the Department of Commerce, and I'm the presiding officer of this virtual-only hearing. This is being recorded to comply with requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act. A little background about today: the statement of inquiry for the proposed rules being considered today was filed as WSR 19-14-050, and the proposed rules were filed as WSR 21-07-150. The proposed rules ensure proper implementation and enforcement of the Clean Energy Transformation Act, known as CETA, as provided for in RCW 19.405.100. The proposed rules apply to consumer-owned utilities, such as municipal utilities, public utility districts, and rural cooperative or mutual utilities. The proposed rules define energy assistance need as the amount of assistance necessary to achieve an energy burden equal to 6% of household income for utility customers. Low income is defined as household incomes that do not exceed higher of 80% of area median income or 200% of federal poverty level, adjusted for household size. These definitions are the same definitions adopted by the Utilities and Transportation Commission. Also, these definitions do not limit any utility from designing a program that uses values below the defined threshold for energy assistance need and low income to define eligible participants. So again, I'm just going to open it up. If anyone wishes to testify today, please put your name and affiliation in the chat box. If you're on the phone, you have the opportunity to unmute yourself now by pressing *6 and giving us your name and affiliation. We'll take just a minute to do that. And as a reminder, we've been accepting written comments. The deadline for written comments on the proposed rules is 5 p.m. today, April 28th. Comments can be submitted by email to ceta@commerce.wa.gov. We'll give everyone who wishes to testify a chance to speak if they've signed in. If there aren't any other questions, we'll get going. Please be sure to state your name and affiliation when you testify. And it looks like we'll start with Simon Fitch, representing the Energy Project. Simon, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. As you mentioned, my name's Simon Fitch, and I'm an attorney representing the Energy Project. We've been participating in the CETA, the Commerce CETA rulemakings since they began, and happy to have a chance to speak today on this important set of rules. We did file written comments today, and we generally support the proposed rules that Commerce has published in the CR 102. I did just want to address one area of concern that we have today. The Energy Project is interested in ensuring that there is flexibility for utilities to adopt a lower energy burden than the 6%, if appropriate for local conditions. And our preference, as we've previously recommended, is that the rule include language to the effect that the energy burden should not exceed 6%. And that's our preference today. In a perfect world, but we continue to request that Commerce consider adopting that language. But we acknowledge the Commerce has not to date opted to go in that direction. We do note, however, that there is language in the CR 102 notice, which states that the definitions do not limit any utility from designing a program that uses lower metrics. And that's helpful. It's definitely consistent with our recommendation. The problem that we see is that, notwithstanding that language, the rule itself will be silent on the flexibility issue. And in fact, the language equal to seems pretty clearly to, could be interpreted to limit flexibility. So what we're requesting Commerce to consider today is to memorialize that language that's in the CR 102 in some fashion in the rules that are adopted, or in accompanying documentation, so that this intent will be available for and be preserved for future days when we may have different folks around, different cast of characters trying to interpret and implement the rule. And so essentially, as we've stated in our written recommendation, we're asking Commerce to look at looking at a way to memorialize the flexibility concept by, for example, amending or updating the guidelines for low income that were previously published in March. That set of guidelines actually generally touches on this area, so that would seem to be a pretty reasonable place to incorporate this language. But we certainly defer to Commerce if there are other places in the adoption process or related documents that would provide a good opportunity to preserve this content, this statement of intent. So that's the point we wanted to make for the hearing today, and appreciate the opportunity. That completes my comments, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Simon. And Joni, thank you for your note. I'm sorry, your internet is not great right now for comments, so thank you for submitting those written. I don't see anybody else who has written in a name that wants to provide testimony at this time, so I'll give another minute to see if there's anybody else who wishes to testify. All right, seeing no one else wishing to testify, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us at today's hearing. Just another reminder that you still have the ability to provide written comments today by 5 p.m. to the email that I mentioned before. Again, that's ceta@commerce.wa.gov. We will be considering these written comments as well as those heard today when making final edits to the proposed rules. We'll provide an explanatory statement of proposed edits for those that it chooses not to adopt as well. We intend to file the final rules known as the CR 103 after a final review of these comments. And after filing the CR 103, the rules will take effect 30 days following that filing. If you'd like to track the implementation of these rules, we ask that you subscribe to our bulletin, which you can do so now on our webpage, commerce.wa.gov/CETA/. Thank you all again for your participation throughout this rulemaking, and we hope that you stay safe and healthy. Thank you.